My name's Lee Carter, and I am a doctoral student at Liberty University. I also teach at Anderson University in Tri-County Technical College. I live in South Carolina. I try to gear a lot of my historical research on some issues within my state that have some historiographical gaps. So, with this being American West, what I looked at was the issue of New Mexican statehood and the connection of Benjamin Tillman, the racist senator from South Carolina from the early 1900s, and his stance on New Mexican statehood. So the essence of the issue I'm looking into was the fact that New Mexico had the population to become a state much earlier, but was delayed till 1912, and just how this went through the time period of a real racial nadir in the United States, a low point where there was a lot of racism and racial focus. Um, it is not surprising that in the discussion over New Mexican statehood and the debates over this, there is a lot of race and racism in the content and the discussions. What's surprising, though, is the source of the support and the opposition. So you might expect, okay, the Tillmans, who are the Southern demagogues of the Democratic Party, who are very racist, would be the ones against New Mexico. But in fact, they were in favor of New Mexico becoming a state, whereas the opposition was led by progressive Republicans, with the spearhead of the opposition being Albert Beveridge of Indiana. So essentially, my research was with the circumstances surrounding just the discussions and the different nuances of different people's viewpoints and what their motivations were for those viewpoints in order to be able to give a more nuanced interpretation of the of a racial surrounded issue in a time period of American history that tends to be painted with a very broad brush. So the significance of my research here is that while there's a lot of research on New Mexican statehood, there's not really anything on the Ben Tillmans, right? Specifically Ben Tillman as kind of the Southern leader in this sense, and why he would support New Mexican statehood when he was so racist in a lot of other areas. So in performing the research, I started in the Jerry Falwell Library, found books and articles, and then sourced mine from there. I also spent a lot of time reading the congressional records and kind of searching through there with what was said on New Mexico and on other debates that would bring in sort of their different viewpoints as well. I went to Clemson, studied the archival correspondence of Ben Tillman from this time. Also studied some a local newspaper for a couple of years, just seeing what was said regarding New Mexico as well. Interestingly, both Tillman and the newspaper I studied said very little regarding New Mexico, which led me to the inference that whatever racial difference they saw was not as significant in their mind as the black and white issues that were so, dominating their focus at this time. So either they didn't see any racial differences, or more likely, those were smaller and less significant and less threatening to them than were the issues between blacks and whites. Two, there were also these political and economic opportunities that they saw, the Southern Democrats saw with regards to New Mexico. And there was the issue that there was a certain assumption that most of them had that Southern whites would move over, especially from Texas, and establish what they called white supremacy in New Mexico, after all. On the other hand, the progressive Republicans viewed the Spanish-speaking Catholic population of New Mexico as dangerously outside their conception of the view of what the American should be. And because their focus was on Americanizing other peoples and pushing out our values and our language, that having a state of our nation that was not along those same lines, they viewed as a threat to their overall project of spreading our culture and building the nation. So some further follow-up questions would be to examine some of the other Southern demagogues from the time, such as Vardaman from Mississippi, and also to study some other newspapers to kind of glean more contextual information to shine further light on why such racists as the Ben Tillmans of the world were willing to support New Mexico as a state.